Let me now turn, Mr. Speaker, if I may, to an issue that is more parochial, but where the outlook is more promising. That's the federal response to the so-called McGirt decision by the United States Supreme Court. Many members will not be aware of this, but last year the Supreme Court decided that much of Oklahoma, for the purposes of criminal prosecution, remains Indian country. In Indian country, only the federal government and tribal law enforcement officials can prosecute Indians who commit crimes, again, on Indian reservations. That, obviously, in the state of Oklahoma will now call for enormously more robust federal law enforcement and tribal law enforcement capabilities. I'm happy to report that in one of the measures that we face today, that request has been taken into, that reality has been taken into account. Frankly, our friend, the Biden administration, asked for $70 million additional dollars for the Department of Justice to finance additional U.S. attorneys, additional federal marshals, and additional FBI for Oklahoma to respond to the McGirt decision. Sadly, our friends did not request similar funds for tribal law enforcement officials, and none of the bills in front of us actually deal with that issue. Last night, we placed an amendment dealing with this before this House. It was part of an en bloc amendment. I actually believe if it had come on its own, it would have passed, but it failed. However, the appropriations process is a long process, and I think negotiations in good faith with the full committee will eventually result in additional federal dollars for law enforcement. Regardless, that Supreme Court decision, the McGirt decision, means the federal government and tribal law enforcement officials must do more in this area. Again, one of the bills in front of us helps with regard to the federal government. I'm hopeful in the final negotiations we can do more on McGirt. My last point, Mr. Speaker, is simply to say we need to look at all of these bills collectively. And just as a piece of friendly advice to my friends, if we're going to get to a deal, three things absolutely have to happen. The first is the amount of money we spend on defense simply must go up. There's not enough money in the bills passed out of the Appropriations Committee to adequately fund our defense in a dangerous world. Second, the outrageous domestic explosion of spending must come down. We simply, as my friend from Pennsylvania pointed out, can't afford a spending spree. Finally, and most importantly, and my friends need to realize this politically, for any of these bills to pass the United States Senate and ultimately become law, all the pro-life provisions that they have systematically stripped out of these bills have to be restored. Otherwise, my friends will get Donald Trump's last negotiated budget for the second year of the Biden administration. I don't think that's what they want, but that's exactly where we're headed unless they change course and work with us to preserve these long-standing pro-life protections that have been in these bills for many cases for decades. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.